Hey everybody, Ben here from DMC Films and Cinderblock Studios, and welcome back to the Principles of Design, Part 2. Today we're talking about balance. So when we start talking about balance, you want to start thinking about something called the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds divides any 2D picture plane, such as a video in this case, into sections of thirds, or 9 boxes. The points in which those lines intersect are sort of interesting focal points. And for many 2D artists, specifically photographers, this is sort of what you understand to be framing a shot. I actually employ this myself when I step off to the side here and sort of intersect with some of those lines. So when you're thinking about a balanced composition, what exactly does that mean? How do you balance a composition? In terms of this video, this scene is actually fairly well balanced. I have bookshelves on either side of me that sort of represent symmetry. I have some different sizes and shapes of jars right down in front, and then there's me, offsetted by 2 different objects on the wall behind me. This is a balanced composition. So composition and balance is about the objects in a scene, the things, the space, everything like that. When you start looking at focal points and things like that, you're like, okay, I'm a good focal point. My water bottle there, up on the front Kleenex box, kind of throwing the rest of the scene off balance. So if I step over here a little bit, now we're in balance again. Keep in mind though, the good balance doesn't just have to do with shapes and objects, but also about values. For example, if we switch over to black and white, you can see that there is a nice, decent amount of balanced values. There's not too much light, there's not too much dark. It works. Maybe my shirt's a little too white for the scene, but it works. So even seeing this and visualizing it, why is balance really that important? Proper balance is essential for keeping the viewer's attention. For example, you're probably extraordinarily distracted by the lamp to my left. If you're into film or literature, you might understand something called the suspension of disbelief. The suspension of disbelief is essentially when you or the viewer looks at something and goes, That's ridiculous, that can't be real, what are you talking about? For this example, it's not just about balancing your composition, but creating something believable. So if you lose somebody on the suspension of disbelief, probably not going to be real good for you. Another form of balance that I'm sure we're all familiar with is the idea of symmetry. The idea that on one side and on the other, it's pretty much exactly the same. As you start getting a little more complex, you're going to see things like more complex semi-symmetry. Things that are roughly the same on both sides, but are still interesting enough to be different. Then as we get a little bit more advanced, we're looking at things like perspective that kind of push that idea of balance off a little bit, and you get things that are asymmetrical, but still balanced. And of course there's always the idea of radial balance, as things in a circle sort of are there together, but there's enough of them, or not too many, not too little. Everything's just balanced, you know. So now that we've talked about balance in my space, let's look at things that are a little more complete. To start, Botticelli's Birth of Venus is a great example of balance. The single figure on the right-hand side, as well as the forest behind her, creates a sense of balance with the winged figures off to the left. It's proof that you don't need another figure on the right to balance that out. You just need some additional elements and values to really kind of bring that piece together. Another great piece to understand balance is Andrew Wyeth's Christina's World. Note about this piece is if it was just her in the house on the right, then it would actually seem a little bit off. Some might see that barn on the left as being a little bit out of place, but really that barn on the left is great for understanding both horizontal and vertical balance. The barn and the house are in balance, and the barn and the house and Christina are all in balance, both horizontally and vertically. Our final piece today is one that not a lot of people actually know the name of. It's Grant Wood's American Gothic. Now this is a really great example of sort of semi-symmetry. The 2 figures, the man and woman, certainly aren't the same height, they're not the same shape. Well, they're sort of the same shape, they're sort of that tall and sort of flat, but they're definitely very different people with very different faces, emotions, everything like that. The way she looks at him, the way the man's just sort of staring straight out like they're getting their picture taken. You're seeing both value balance here, as well as great sort of semi-symmetry. So I hope what we've discussed here and the examples have given you an idea of what compositional balance is. Remember, in our journey through the principles of design, if you ever get lost or want to check out some of the other parts, there's a link in the description box below that will take you to the Principles of Design playlist, and you can catch right up with us. And as always, for more tips, tutorials, and other art videos, subscribe to the channel. This has been from DMC Films and Cinderblock Studios. See you guys next time.